The city of Giel in Belgium has had what amounts to a community mental health foster care program for at least 700 years. For centuries, families in this small city have intentionally taken in strangers who live with mental health disorders and disabilities. Giel owes this tradition to its historic devotion to Saint Dymphna, the patron saint of people living with mental and emotional disorders. The host families are trained and supported by the local psychiatric hospital. The people they take in, who are evaluated by the hospital before being admitted to the program, are called boarders or guests. Rather than being subjected to sequestration or treatment, the boarders live among the people of the town in complete freedom, and researchers over hundreds of years have repeatedly remarked about how happy they are to simply be living their lives. According to one researcher, as of 2005, nearly a third of the boarders had lived with their foster family for over 50 years. When asked why this program was so successful, one of the hosts remarked that she thought it was because the host families didn't have a picture of who this person was before, or have expectations of who this person should be or how they should act apart from their disability. The hosts simply accept the person as they are, chasing away hallucinated lions coming out of the wall, for instance, or helping them find companionship if they're lonely. The reason Giel's program has survived the advent of modern psychiatric medicine is, at least in part, because its core commitment is to restoring community for people who have previously felt cut off. There's a similar sense of cut off for people who are nearing the end of their lives. When I was doing my hospital chaplaincy, our cohort was warned that we would be entrusted with stories. At the end of a person's life, there are stories they need to tell, but often they don't want to tell them to the people who know and love them best. I heard stories, especially from a couple of different Holocaust survivors, that were in some ways hard to hear, but that nonetheless needed to be told. Some parts of those stories were funny, and some parts were crushingly sad. All of them were important. And in many ways, my anonymity as a hospital chaplain gave me the ability to ask good follow-up questions and to listen objectively, because I wasn't burdened with my own grief or prior knowledge of the person in front of me. It's harder when you know the person, when you know how they used to be or what they used to be able to do in the before times. It can be difficult to know how to be. If we're lucky and live long and full lives, at some point our world will be reduced to a hospital bed, and that is often incredibly isolating. Rabbi Steve Leder has written a book and given interviews about ministry with people who are at the end of their lives or who are very sick. He reminds us how important it is to just show up, even if you're not sure what to say, and of how important it is to be genuine, living into your gifts. If you're a person who likes to feed people, bring a casserole. If you're someone who's good at tidying, make the hospital room hospitable. If you're funny, help the person to laugh. And above all, he describes the importance of giving people a mental vacation from that hospital bed, of imagining the person as they were in their 30s or 40s and giving them the opportunity to invite you into the world of their memories. So he coaches fellow clergy and family and friends to be genuine, to treat the dying or sick person as the human being they are, and to ask open-ended questions like, what is the dumbest thing you ever did? Where did you first meet Mom? Who was your first kiss? What did you and your best friends used to get up to? And let those questions spark stories and conversation that allows that person and you to leave the present reality, if only for just a moment. In these conversations, the relationship dynamic with our loved ones can be restored from simply caregiving to life sharing. If you're going through hell, Rabbi Leder says, don't come out empty-handed. The thing about serious chronic illness or injury is that most people don't know what it's like and expect that there must be some way to get better, because when most of us get sick or injured, we do get better. The logic goes, there must be some way. None of us want to believe that sometimes things just are what they are and there isn't a known cure, not only because we care about our loved one who is suffering, but also because we don't want to imagine that we would find ourselves in a similar situation. And feeling impotent. Sometimes we do exactly the thing we shouldn't do. We back away from the very person who needs our support the most. The man by the side of the pool at Beth-zatha was one of the many people suffering that day, one of many people who had experienced alienation from his community because his disability had set him apart. For 38 years, presumably, various people had attempted to help him. Various physicians had offered cures. Various helpful neighbors had suggested he try this or that. Certainly more than a few people had attempted to explain why this man was so afflicted in a bid to comfort themselves with a sense of control in the face of suffering. We know that his community had stopped trying to care for him because he was stuck, attempting to lower himself into the pool on his own without any help, and other people were even simply cutting in front of him. The people around him had given up on the idea that anything could help, even this pool that was renowned for healing. Maybe all he could hope for now was a little relief, feeling his body's weight lighten in the water. And perhaps even the man had given up hope. "Do you want to be made well?" Jesus asks. The man does not answer his question at all. Presumably, he doesn't think it's even possible after all of this time. Perhaps he thinks Jesus is just another impotent quack trying to sell him a cure. Jesus is able to give this man not just a mental vacation, but he is able to restore his body and thus restore him back into his community, a community that didn't know how to relate to someone whose body no longer did what he wanted it to do, a community that only related to this man through a sense of pity and frustration, a community that separated themselves from him and from his sense of despair. Jesus does not greet this man with optimistic platitudes or a pitying shrug. He does not give this man false hope either. Without waiting for the man to ask to be healed, without waiting for the man to prove that he is worthy or attest to his greatness, Jesus gives the man embodied hope by declaring that he can do what everyone thought was impossible. After 38 years, the man can pick up his mat and walk. And in giving this kind of embodied hope to the man, Jesus shows the community what hope is, too, how to show up for those who are suffering in their loneliness, and how to be the beloved community on the Sabbath, the very day on which the community was expected to reorient its focus away from work and busyness and toward God and one another. How often are we certain that there is no reason to hope? How often do we attempt to rationalize the reasons for the bad things that happen and so absolve ourselves of the need to show up and work for change? How often do we find ourselves without words and so refrain from showing up when we're needed? In the midst of the man's suffering and isolation, Jesus shows up and speaks hope in the midst of despair. He sees this man who has been overlooked and ignored and restores him to community. He shows this man that he is not alone, that his suffering matters, and that he is loved. In the midst of our own times of isolation and loneliness, Jesus sees us too. In our own times of despair, Jesus calls to us, restoring us into the care of community, into the love that lives in hope. Amen.